We've heard from Ben Bernanke talking about how he's acknowledged the Bitcoin, but the caveat that he put on the top of that was about law enforcement. It was about the safety of Bitcoins, the ability to be able to, obviously they can't counterfeit them, that's one of the reasons why people buy into these things, but the reason why people are so scared about them is the ability that they can't be traced, the anonymity of it all. And certainly payment institutions like World First, who actually hold the world record for making a payment between two countries, by the way.
Not for speed and cost. It's much faster. There's $150 million was transferred today using Bitcoin for a fraction of a cost that no firm, including Jeremy's, would ever approach. So this is a real genuine threat to that industry, number one. Number two, you talked about counterfeiting. You can't counterfeit Bitcoin. That's a real problem with the British pound or the American dollar, is that they're being printed willy-nilly to solve lots of problems that politicians can't seem to solve. So they simply print money. Okay. People are panicked by what's happening in the banking and the central banks, and they're moving into something that they perceive as having a store of value.
The Bitcoin is always talked up by people who own it because they're speculating.
The people use it every single day to transfer money all over the world. It has a primary purpose as a means of transferring money, number one. Number two, it's also a currency. That's why it has huge value in this economy.
I mean, what is interesting is the fact that people have chosen something that they think bypasses governments and bypasses regulation. That says something about the climate we live in.
It's a socio-economic movement which we're going through at the moment. And every time you have a socio-economic movement, you have to have a money behind it, a currency behind that, be that gold. And at the moment, this seems to be Bitcoin. I'm happy with that.
What do you mean it's a socio-economic movement?
What does that mean?
It's a libertarian movement. By the people, for the people. Get away from big government. Get away from big industry.
The current scandal with co-op people are scared by the banking in this country and around the world.
But you heard the point the commentator made there, that people think it's a post-government currency. It's not, because the government can step on it or stamp it out if they want to.
That's false.
Why?
Because it's completely outside. It's like P2P file swapping hit the music industry. This is the P2P file swapping of money. And so the banking system and the current regulatory environment, it will be as effective at stopping that as the music industry or the Hollywood industry. The regulatory environment in the US and the UK versus the rest of the world. The unbanked of the world, 6 billion people that don't really have access to banking infrastructure as such, are now using these currencies, using it with their mobile technologies, and they are going to lead this market. The number one market for Bitcoin right now is in China. And if the US and the UK don't want to compete...
When you say Bitcoin to people, a lot of people will think automatically of the dark net. They'll think of the drugs, they'll think of the child porn, they'll think of the rather seedy side of the transactions that people don't want to do up front. Isn't that where Bitcoin's going to stay?
No, of course not. That's a very minor part. When Silk Road was busted, the Bitcoin started to move up in value because you got rid of what was perceived as a bad agent in the market.
Will you ever invest in virtual currency?
I had a look at it a couple of years ago, had a place, see what the infrastructure behind it was.
Richard Branson just said today he's accepting Bitcoin for his interspatial flight new programs, and he's already booked a $250,000 seat with it. So people are accepting there's 20,000 merchants that accept Bitcoin, and it's growing in popularity.
One thing to do with your Bitcoin. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you both.